Hello, fellow humans. You must have heard the words recession, depression, stagnation, stagflation. They all mean basically the absence of economic growth, more specifically the gross domestic product that is not growing.
Growth, growth, and growth.
I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. We simply cannot afford to be a low-growth country.
Look at these titles. Why is everyone so obsessed with this growth? Why is everyone scared of not having economic growth? And why have we pinned all our hopes for a good life, all measures of progress, on this very narrow notion and this very narrow number? Many of our problems come from this obsession with the foolish idea of economic growth. We can have a much prosperous and happier life without growth. Let's see the reasons why growth is a foolish idea. Reason 1. The obsession with economic growth has numbed, hijacked, frozen, shackled our imagination. Everything good is about growth, progress, wealth, personal development, innovation, power, happiness. Green growth is good. Blue growth is good. We dump all these versions of growth into one number, growth of GDP. We think that if GDP grows, all the other kinds of growth will automatically follow. And we don't think about any other consequences. We don't question why progress, why well-being has to be about growth. It's foolish. Producing stuff for the sake of producing forgets why we have an economy in the first place. The economy should be about satisfying human needs for living, but real needs, not manufactured needs. Humans have flourished for thousands of years without economic growth, and you may wonder, would we have had quantum mechanics and the internet without growth? Very likely, yes. Quantum mechanics was invented in the 1920s, decades before the notion of GDP was even invented by this guy, Simon Kuznets. And the internet was invented in a research laboratory, paid for with government money, not by corporations. Reason 2. Growth measures not what truly matters for the human soul, but only things that have a price. Here's a mantra that economists know by heart. What counts cannot always be counted, and what is counted does not necessarily count. The economy is supposed to be a means to an end, to satisfy needs. Timotei Parik divides economic activity into 5 families: extraction, production, allocation, consumption, and disposal. Extraction is, I cut a tree from the forest. Production is, I make a chair from the tree. Allocation is, I give the chair to a friend, I lend it to a neighbor, I give it to charity, or I sell it. Consumption is, I sit on the chair, I use it. Disposal is, when the chair is no longer useful, it becomes trash. If these activities do not make our lives better, what is the purpose of the economy then? Growth measures only when I sell the chair, but not when I cut the tree, not when I gift it, not when I lend it, not when I recycle it. All these are meaningful for life, but growth doesn't care about them. Reason 3. Growth is blind. It cannot see production that is not measured in money, and cannot make a difference between desirable and undesirable goods and services. It's difficult to measure an economy in numbers of loaves of bread, or tons of sanitizing gel, or hours of massage. GDP measures the prices of these things, and that's the size of the economy. But these prices are their exchange value, not their use value. This video you are watching now is free, but hopefully you may learn something from it, which would be the use value of the video. But GDP has no idea about it. Had I asked for a price, meaning an exchange value, then the same video would contribute to economic growth. What about the desirability of things? What is desirable and undesirable from this list? The production of a vaccine, a fridge connected to the internet, a speculative financial product, antidepressants, cleaning up after an oil spill, houses wrapped in Halloween decorations made from plastic. All these things contribute to GDP in the same way because they have a price on the market. Economist Éloi Laurent writes that GDP is blind to economic well-being, blind to human well-being, deaf to social suffering, and silent to the state of the planet. Reason 4. Growth does not care about quality at all. If a computer had the price in 1990 as it has today adjusted for inflation, Their contribution to GDP would be exactly the same even when the newer computer is significantly more performant. The improvement in quality is irrelevant for economic growth. We can argue that new products of a better quality were created, which are useful for humans, allegedly. Yes, but GDP does not measure their quality, it only cares about their price. A dilapidated house on a valuable lot of land counts more in GDP than a high-quality off-grid tiny house that has zero carbon footprint. Reason 5. Economic growth is not about the size of the pie getting larger. It doesn't measure the amount of wealth in a country. It only measures how much is produced and sold on the market in 1 year. Growth is more about how agitated an economy is. More agitation brings more growth. But this agitation can create 100 new billionaires and tens of millions of people unemployed. If the average agitation went up from last year, the economy grows. Bad luck for those less agitated. The pie grows through expansion. For example, Amazon ships more boxes, or through intensification. We change our smartphones every 2 years instead of every 10 years. The opposite is also interesting. The pie can also get smaller when the same service becomes free. For example, we no longer buy volumes of encyclopedias, but we go for free to Wikipedia. Approximately the same service, but outside economic growth. And we are much happier with Wikipedia, right? Reason 6. Growth is a monomaniacal ideology. GDP is in all social and political conversations about healthcare, ecology, education, culture. Apparently, we need growth to invest in hospitals, schools, roads, bridges. Allegedly, money does not grow in trees, so we need to expand the economy to have more money, which then we can spend in hospitals and schools. For people and businesses, money represents purchasing power. For the government, money represents action power. Profitability is an invisible barrier for thinking. To break the chains on this thinking, we can use modern monetary theory, which basically says that governments do not need to collect taxes to have money to spend on hospitals and schools. Governments that have their own currency do not have to wait for growth to spend because they can issue as much money as they need on the condition that there are enough resources, such as people, who can work. Taxes and inflation are a separate story. Companies create inflation, not governments. This guy that said that high government spending is the only cause for inflation was wrong. Economies can have a combination of high-low growth with high-low inflation because there's no causal relation between them. Having growth does not get rid of inflation, does not create jobs, does not increase happiness. Reason 7. Growth cannot be decoupled, disconnected, separated from the environment. In 2020, a group of 16 researchers reviewed the entire literature on decoupling, and they found that the observed rates of decoupling will not allow a substantial reduction in the use of natural resources and greenhouse gas emissions. This means green growth is an illusion. Doesn't happen. It is impossible to invent technologies that do not make use of natural resources in one way or another. Since this huge study was published, no opposing evidence was published. Nothing, no counter-evidence. On top of this, energy return rates are falling, especially those of fossil fuels. The EROI for global oil and gas production grew from 23 to 1 in 1992, burning 1 barrel extracts 23, to 33 to 1 in 1999 due to improved extraction techniques, but has then dropped to 18 to 1 in 2005. Taking fossil and renewable energies into account, another study finds that the EROI of the global energy system fell from 7 to 1 in 1995 to 6 to 1 in 2018. Reason 8, growth creates rebound effects. We talked about this before on this channel. This is when a technical or social improvement that makes possible the use of a resource more efficiently leads to the intensification of the use of that resource. The shale gas boom in the United States has lowered the price of energy and therefore production costs, but it has encouraged companies to produce more and therefore emit more CO2. Another example, 5G proponents tout the fact that cell towers are more energy efficient. But to reduce energy consumption and therefore decouple, energy efficiency gains must compensate for the increase in data traffic. Given past developments, this is very unlikely. Watching a movie in 8K will require 32 times more data than today's high definition. To avoid a total rebound effect of 5G, the efficiency gains for energy would have to be greater than a factor of 10. Reason 9, growth creates bad incentives for innovation. The following are all innovations: horizontal drilling, hydraulic fracturing, new crossing points for cargo ships in the Arctic, new advertising techniques that encourage purchases, toxic chemicals, software to spy on employees. What's behind these innovations? Growth and profit. The more a company has invested in a technology, the more it will finance research and development activities centered on the same technology. There's a path addiction that causes companies with a lot of innovation in combustion engines, the majority of companies, to invest primarily in this type of vehicle and not in electric. This is why switching to electric cars is so slow. And to make all this innovation possible, we need more energy, a lot more. The International Renewable Energy Association tells us that fueling continued growth without exceeding the 2 degrees Celsius limit would require the installation of 12,200 gigawatts of solar and wind capacity by 2050, more than 8 times the current capacity. One study found that to decarbonize electricity in the United States by 2050 would require energy infrastructure construction rates 14 times faster than those seen in the last 50 years. Reason 10, growth does not care about reproductive forces, according to feminist economics. This is not just about sex, but about everything that cares about, maintains, renews, and improves our capacity for work and keeps a functioning social life. It includes domestic tasks, mutual aid within a family or relatives, reciprocity, informal work, voluntary work, activism, and in general all actions which accommodate living with and around other humans. We have short and recurring elements which reproduce labor power, such as food, housing, medical care, clothing, and other daily activities which keep us alive. We have long elements that have to do with education, culture, safety, and the quality of our environment. All these reproductive forces take more time of our lives than productive forces. Without these, there's no growth. Without these, there's no society and no economy. Growth does not count and does not value any reproductive forces, but it demands them imperiously and dismissively at the same time. How, you wonder, when right-wing governments cut spending for healthcare, education, arts, culture? Reason 11. Growth is at war with sleep. Capitalism never sleeps. Raising children, doing dishes, cooking dinner, cleaning the house, laundry, gardening, playing, forces us to deal with a limited budget of time. This word limited is quite heavy and super important. We are finite beings, us humans, so why does the capitalist economy not understand this? Why are corporations asking us to work 8 hours a day or more? Why are we sending work emails at 9 p.m. when we have day shifts? Why don't we all have 3, 4, or 6 months paid vacation? Because business needs to grow, needs to make a buck or become extinct, needs to make a profit at our expense. Why can business not exist without this growth imperative? Well, they can, and they do. They are called cooperatives. But this is a subject for another video. Reason 12. Growth does not save us time. Growth actually slows us down, makes us busier. Fast speed of a car or fast data transfer doesn't matter as much as the generalized speed of life. In the 1970s, Jean-Pierre Dupuis, a polytechnic engineer, showed that the generalized speed of the automobile, which he estimated at approximately 16 kilometers per hour, is in general lower than that of the bicycle. Why? Because of traffic jams, because of lack of parking, because of long commutes. The temporal footprint of growth is even worse than being stuck on highways. We have faster internet, but we work more time. We have bigger houses, but less time to clean them and maintain them. We have more streaming platforms and TV shows, but less time to review and enjoy them. So we rely on manipulative algorithms to recommend us something because we are exhausted to use our proactive critical thinking. Growth did not create more free time for us to think, to develop tastes, appreciate the joy of finding content for ourselves, and enrich our minds from within. Reason 13, growth is often an accumulation by dispossession. A direct dispossession would be, I deprive you of something. Land, natural resources, free time. Indirect dispossession is when growth mobilizes certain resources that cease to be available for other activities. One could say that the market sector deprives the non-market sector of available time that could potentially have enriched it. Example, imagine you wanted to organize a system of local exchange of childcare between neighbors. Such a system would work when enough parents joined to ensure the rotation of custody and a level of trust, which implies getting to know the other parents, spend time with them. If some of the parents decided to put their children in private daycares, the system will no longer work. The less the system works, the fewer parents participate in it and put in effort to improve it. It's a self-fulfilling spiral that leads to the social equivalent of bankruptcy. In an economy where childcare is commodified, purchased on the market, the economic growth of commercial daycares will be at the expense of self-managed, free, and mutual daycares. Reason 14, growth is not always progress. Growth has something very sad and lame about it. People buy more, often for the wrong reasons, always at the expense of free time that must be sacrificed to maintain purchasing power. We are wasting our life just to earn the ability to buy foolish things and foolish services. Herman Daly called this madness uneconomic growth. Jan Drunowski imagined a line of affluence that should not be exceeded. Manfred Max Neef had the threshold hypothesis, where striving to grow becomes counterproductive as a development strategy. Take personal data, for example. Their global market is around 300 billion euros, with an average price for a consumer profile around 600 euros. The more data you sell, the richer you get in terms of GDP. But is that really progress? Reason 15, growth corrupts human connections. Turning everything into a commodity, good, or service that has a price may degrade the satisfaction we get from it. Hiring an actor pretending to be your friend for the afternoon surely doesn't have the same appeal as a genuine friendship. Bearing children with the intention of selling them for money is a corruption of parenthood, because it treats children as things to be sold rather than beings to be loved. Having Airbnb instead of couch surfing is a corruption of hospitality. Paying for something radically changes our experience and expectation. Think in terms of financial incentives. They overpower all others. If a friend bakes you a birthday cake, you will probably not complain if you don't like it, but if you're paying for the same cake, it better be good, otherwise you'll complain because you didn't get what you paid for. Reason 16. Growth corrupts the social fabric. When commodification reaches a certain critical mass, it becomes impossible to support yourself outside the market. If you want to go away for the weekend but all available apartments are on Airbnb, you will have no choice. You will also have to put yours on Airbnb so you can earn the money to rent the one you want to rent. We become capitalists against our deep desires because the temptation of gain becomes the dominant motivation for social interaction. If everything becomes a market because capitalism needs to grow, this reduces the possibility of the development of three other forms of allocation of needs through giving, reciprocity, and distribution. If markets are everywhere, hospitality, generous help, and charity become services that require payment. David Graeber showed in his famous book that the first 5,000 years that the cohesion of a society is maintained by non-market relations. Commodification becomes problematic because it erodes the social foundation. Markets make us think of each other as buyers and sellers hunting for silly deals, bargains, haggles, chaffer, things on sale. When markets dominate, sellers turn into liars, deceivers, aggressors, pushers, swindlers, con artists. Reason 17. Growth made us poorer, not richer. Can millennials, Generation Z, Generation Alpha buy a house today as easy as their parents or grandparents? Can we save as much as baby boomers, who are thought to be the richest generation in history? When our pensions depend on the stock market and can disappear on a whim? We were told for the past 40 years that when the ruling class will get richer, Their wealth will trickle down to the rest of us because our overlords will create jobs for us. They did give us some jobs, but about 2/3 of them are bullshit jobs. And they also stole from us. In US alone, the ruling class stole $50 trillion from the working class since 1975. Look how fast the annual wealth grew in the richest of the rich compared to the rest of humans for the past 25 years.
Where's the money, Lebowski?
Reason 18, growth has ruined work. The connection between jobs and growth is so pervasive in the collective imagination that even the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals wants to promote decent work and sustainable growth. But this connection between work and growth is not that simple. Employment depends on production, hourly productivity, and working time. If we produce 1% more, but the hourly labor productivity also increases by 1%, the employment rate will not change. If 1% less is produced, but labor productivity decreases by more than 1%, or working time per employee decreases by more than 1%, the same volume of production will require more labor hours, and therefore potentially more jobs. There are 3 different ways to create jobs: produce more, work slower, or work less time. In each case, more workers are needed to maintain production. So even when production goes down, we can still create jobs. That is what growth fails to understand. Reason 19, growth has ruined the quality of life. We keep hearing that we need growth to raise the quality of life. There must be some connection between GDP and happiness, right? In 1974, economist Richard Easterlin conducted surveys in 19 countries on the link between GDP and happiness. Result, although there is a positive correlation between the 2 variables, this link fades after a certain level of per capita income. We call this the Easterlin's paradox. This is the 2022 World Happiness Report. We learned that Costa Rica, with a GDP of 12,000 euros per capita, France 39,000 euros, Finland 49,000 euros, and the United States 64,000 euros, have a similar quality of life, but their GDP are very different. This is data from OECD that shows how GDP growth is not linked to all changes in well-being. Higher purchasing power does not bring a better life. On the contrary, it may cause more distress, more anxieties, more envy. Growth is just growth, it's not happiness. Reason 20, growth has ruined language. Finally, we have come to confuse growth in wisdom, growth in knowledge, growth of quality of friends, growth in self-awareness with economic growth, material growth, and growth of wealth in general. There's an invasion of economics into our language, into the stories we tell each other about what we want to do with our lives. If I only had that much money, I could become a poet or a YouTuber or learn pottery or learn piano or build a cabin with my own hands. Economic growth as a pre-existing condition to live life with dignity is an assault on human condition and on our chances to reach our individual potential. When we realize that it is freedom we want, not wealth, then we can drop the fixation with growth and forge a better world. In a future episode, I will discuss how degrowth answers these problems with growth and how we can replace capitalism with the post-growth, well-being economy. So hit subscribe and come back to help us grow the growth. I'd like to thank my Patreons for helping me stay independent and ad-free. They have my eternal gratitude. If you can support this channel, please visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/Vlad Bunea.